The Keth'vari research facility hummed with quiet efficiency as xenobiologist Dr. Zilthax examined the latest specimen through reinforced glass. The human sat motionless in the sterile containment chamber, appearing utterly unremarkable, bipedal, furless except for patches on its head, and possessed of only 2 optical sensors. Fascinating how primitive they appear, Zilthax chittered to his assistant, his forearms manipulating holographic displays with practiced precision. According to our scouts, this species has barely achieved interstellar travel. Their technology is laughably crude. The human, who had identified himself only as Kytherian Voss, watched them with what seemed like mild curiosity rather than the terror expected from a captured primitive. Research Director Vexthul glided into the observation chamber on his serpentine lower body, his scaled hide gleaming under the artificial lights. "Have we learned anything of value from this specimen?" he hissed, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had catalogued over 300 species for the Galactic Council. The preliminary scans show nothing remarkable: average bone density, standard neural patterns, unremarkable muscle mass. I fail to see why the Council considers these humans worth studying. Voss shifted slightly in his chair, and Vexthul noted with satisfaction how the creature's movements seemed sluggish compared to their own species' fluid grace. The containment field hummed reassuringly, designed to hold creatures 10 times stronger than this pathetic example. Dr. Keth'vari, the facility's chief psychologist, tapped her elongated cranium thoughtfully with one of her 6 delicate fingers. "Perhaps their primitive nature is precisely what makes them interesting," she suggested, her translator rendering her melodic tones into standard galactic. "Our behavioral models predict they should be cowering in terror, yet this one appears observant, almost as if it's studying us." Voss smiled slightly at this comment, a gesture that made the assembled scientists uncomfortable for reasons they couldn't articulate. "Tell me," he said in surprisingly fluent galactic standard, "do you always discuss your test subjects as if they can't understand you?" The casual way he spoke, without fear or deference, sent an unexpected chill through the room. Chief Administrator Quindar materialized in the chamber using his species' natural phasing ability, his crystalline form refracting the light into prismatic patterns. "Specimens that can speak are hardly unprecedented," he declared with the confidence of someone who had overseen the processing of countless primitive species. "Intelligence is common throughout the galaxy. What matters is the quality and application of that intelligence." He gestured dismissively toward the containment chamber. "This creature's people use chemical rockets and metal projectiles. They haven't even mastered basic energy manipulation or achieved proper technological singularity. By our calculations, they're at least 8 centuries behind galactic standard." Voss leaned back in his chair, still wearing that unsettling smile. "Chemical rockets," he repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, Administrator, have you ever considered why a species might choose seemingly primitive solutions?" The first hint of something unusual came during the routine cognitive assessment. Dr. Keth'vari presented Voss with a series of 3-dimensional puzzles that typically took even advanced species several minutes to solve. The human glanced at each configuration for mere seconds before providing the correct solution, his responses coming so quickly that the automated systems flagged them as potentially random. "Interesting," Voss commented, solving his 15th puzzle in under 3 seconds. "These are based on spatial relationships, pattern recognition, and logical progression. Do all species in your Galactic Council struggle with such basic concepts?" Keth'vari's 6 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of deep confusion among her people. She had designed these tests to challenge the most advanced minds in known space. When Dr. Zilthax introduced physical challenges, expecting the human to demonstrate the weakness typical of non-predator species, the results defied all expectations. Voss casually bent the supposedly indestructible testing apparatus with his bare hands, then proceeded to perform what he called basic calisthenics that would have impressed even the warrior caste of the most physically gifted species in the Council. "You mentioned earlier that you scanned for muscle mass," Voss said conversationally while doing one-handed push-ups. "I'm curious, did your scans account for muscle fiber density, neural pathway efficiency, or adaptive stress response?" The human's movements were fluid, controlled, and demonstrated a body that could apparently function at peak efficiency under conditions that would cripple most known life forms. The breakthrough came when Voss asked to see their computer systems. "I'm something of a programmer myself," he explained with characteristic understatement. Within minutes of accessing their quantum crystalline computational matrix, he had not only learned their programming languages but had begun optimizing their code in ways that made their most advanced AI systems run 30% more efficiently. Chief Technician Morgax watched in growing horror as this supposedly primitive being rewrote centuries of technological development with casual ease. Your quantum entanglement protocols are elegant but inefficient, Voss observed, his fingers dancing across controls that should have been incomprehensible to his species. You're thinking too linearly. Reality is more flexible than your models suggest. The true revelation began when Voss started asking questions about their history, their science, their philosophy. His inquiries weren't random. They were surgical, precise, designed to expose the foundational assumptions underlying their entire civilization. You've classified over 300 species, he mused during one conversation with Vexthal. But have you ever wondered why you always encounter them after they've achieved interstellar travel? What about the species that choose isolation, that develop technologies you can't detect, that might be observing you? The questions were delivered with such casual confidence that the research director found himself answering automatically, only realizing afterward that he was being systematically debriefed by his own test subject. Dr. Korenai's psychological profiles grew more disturbing with each session. The human demonstrated not just intelligence, but a form of adaptive thinking that seemed to operate on multiple levels simultaneously. He could engage in complex philosophical discussions about the nature of consciousness while simultaneously solving mathematical theorems and apparently running some form of background analysis on everyone he encountered. It's as if his mind is a parallel processing system, she reported to the administrative board. He's not just thinking, he's thinking about thinking, while thinking about us thinking about him thinking. The recursive depth is. She paused, her translator struggling with concepts that had no equivalent in standard galactic languages. Unprecedented. The facility's security systems, designed by the most paranoid military minds in the galaxy, proved utterly inadequate when Voss decided to demonstrate his actual capabilities. He didn't break out of his containment. He simply walked through the energy barriers as if they didn't exist, having apparently found a way to modulate his body's bioelectric field to match the containment frequency. I appreciate the hospitality, he told the emergency response team that surrounded him. But I think I've learned what I came here to learn. When asked what he meant, Voss smiled that unsettling smile again. You assumed I was captured. That was your first mistake. The final revelation came when Voss accessed their communication systems with the same casual ease he'd shown with everything else. I should probably check in, he said, activating long-range quantum communications with technology that shouldn't have been able to interface with their systems. The response that came back was in a language that their universal translators couldn't parse, delivered with harmonics that suggested not just intelligence, but vast, patient, coordinated intelligence. My colleagues are wondering if I've finished the preliminary assessment, Voss explained to the terrified scientists. They're curious about your civilization. Whether you're worth making contact with, or whether you're just another young species that needs more time to mature. The implications crashed over the facility's staff like a tsunami of cosmic horror. This wasn't a primitive human taken for study. This was an advanced scout from a species so far beyond their understanding that their most sophisticated technology was apparently child's toys to them. The primitive chemical rockets weren't signs of technological limitation. They were evidence of a species that had developed along completely different lines, possibly achieving capabilities that transcended their understanding of physics itself. The Death World, Voss mentioned casually. Earth. You cataloged it as barely habitable, didn't you? All those environmental extremes, predators, natural disasters. You probably wondered how anything could evolve there. His smile was no longer unsettling, it was terrifying. Those weren't obstacles to overcome. They were training. The emergency session of the facility's leadership bordered on hysteria. Administrator Quindar's crystalline form flickered with stress patterns, while Director Vexthal had coiled himself into the defensive posture his species adopted when facing existential threats. We cannot let this information reach the Galactic Council, Vexthal declared. If they discover that we've been observing, cataloging, and planning to subjugate a species this advanced. The implications were clear to everyone present. Species that made first contact with beings vastly superior to themselves typically had two choices, subservience or extinction. The question, Voss said from where he sat calmly in the center of their panicked circle, is what you do next. Do you pretend this never happened? Do you try to warn your council? Or do you consider that maybe, just maybe, it's time for your species to grow up? As Voss prepared to leave, walking through their security systems like they were cobwebs, he paused at the facility's main entrance. For what it's worth, he told the assembled scientists, this was illuminating. Your species has potential, but you're thinking too small. The galaxy is vast, ancient, and full of wonders you can't imagine. When you're ready to explore it as students rather than conquerors, perhaps we'll meet again. With that, he stepped outside into the alien atmosphere that should have killed him instantly and simply vanished, leaving behind only the horrifying knowledge that somewhere among the stars, an entire species of beings like him was watching, waiting, and making decisions about the future of everyone else in ways that the Galactic Council couldn't even begin to comprehend.